Hello and welcome to Learn, Do, Become Radio, episode 94. I'm April Perry, and here at Learn, Do, Become, we help people who are drowning in the details of their personal and professional lives to create simple systems so we can all do what matters most. Now, today's podcast is called 5 Life-Changing Habits Most People Overlook. And this is something that Eric and I actually recorded about 5 years ago when we first launched Learn, Do, Become. And this was a special resource that we had available for people, and they could opt in on our homepage. We have since updated our homepage to basically focus on our Steps to Everyday Productivity program, where we help people to build a step command central. And we're working on a step command central on every desk, which is so exciting. But we wanted to revisit this special audio because we've had so many requests coming in from people saying, hey, where can I find that audio? And I want to listen to it. And I really love talking about these 5 areas with you and Eric. So I hope that you enjoyed today's podcast. And we have a special summary and a template that goes with this audio. That's available on our show notes page. So you can go find that at learndobecome.com/episode 94. And then if you want to come sign up for our free training, if you haven't taken that yet, it's at learndobecome.com/step. Okay, we're going to dive in, a little blast from the past, going back. I just re-listened to it. It was really fun to hear me and Eric at the very beginning of our Learn, Do, Become journey. But the principles we still apply today. So enjoy, and we will see you on the other side. Hello, and welcome to Learn, Do, Become. I'm April Perry here with my husband, Eric.
Hello, everybody.
And we're talking today about 5 life-changing habits that most people overlook. Now, this is pretty much an overview about the principles and topics we're going to be covering at Learn, Do, Become. And we thought it would be fun to just start with one really specific habit from each of the 5 areas that we're going to be covering, and then be able to give some challenges and some action items associated with the habits and just have a little fun together.
Yeah, we're actually very excited to have you with us here at Learn to Become. And this is something we started because, there are a lot of great principles and practices out in the world that if we are able to learn them and apply them, our lives will become better. And we want to make it very clear that as we're exploring these 5 areas that Learn to Become features, we don't think we're experts or professionals in these areas. We're learning.
You're not perfect?
I am not perfect, far from it. But I think it's a wonderful place, almost a laboratory or a workshop where all of us can come together and share some of the things we've learned or experienced, some of the best practices, and really grow together as we try to learn things that we need to know. With that learning, we then do and put it into application. And then with a consistent doing or application of those things, we become what we want to become. So we just wanted to highlight 5 habits, one in each of these areas, to give you a feel for what really is going to be on this site and be part of this community.
Now, before we jump into the habits, we want to talk a little bit about what we mean by architecting a life of excellence. That's our tagline at Learn, Do, Become, architect a life of excellence. So what does that really mean? What are we talking about? Do you want to give an overview, Eric?
Yes. Yes, I do. So I think all of us will define excellence in our own way. And it's just, the same way we apply our beliefs, our faith, how we define our family. It'll all be very unique. But I think as we look to the ideals in our lives, we know what excellence feels like and consists of. We study the lives and the experiences of those that we admire, the greats, if you will. And so I think it's figuring out what excellence looks like and then figuring out what are the actions, what are the steps we need to take, we can take in our lives to get to that point. And I do think it's a conscientious effort. It's an exercise consistently being done throughout our lives as we grow from, where we are, maybe mediocre to good, and then good to better and better to best. So it's this lifelong process that really should be enjoyable. It should be fun that we do for ourselves, we do as a couple if we're married, and we do with our families so that we really can create, little by little, that life of excellence.
Okay.
So the first one is kind of looking at the architecture of life, our life architecture. And I think this is an important place to start because everything in our lives that is really needful or important is created or developed from a plan. It was created conceptually or in its essence long before it was created physically. I mean, some examples are of a house or a home being created from architectural, structural, mechanical, and landscape designs and plans. Vehicles are come off of engineering. Clothing is made or sewn and created from a pattern. Foods are prepared by following recipes, and books and classes are coming from an outline or a syllabus. And art is often derived from a model or a likeness that is being replicated. But it's interesting, as we look at the most important resource or asset that we have, our own lives, we often don't put much conscientious effort or thought into planning and developing that framework.
You just wake up in the morning and try to go.
Too often it becomes days and months and years that just unfold on top of each other without that same type of conscientious thought. So just wanted to talk a little bit about how we can maybe take some steps very simply to put that into a practice that we really are thoughtful and mindful about how we create our lives.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up as the daughter of an architect, so there were always blueprints all over my house. And this concept of life architecture that Eric's been interested in for years and years, ever since I've even met you, this is something that I'm really excited about. So we're going to talk about these 5 habits today. But one of the things that we want to emphasize is that what we're going to be sharing is not going to be new information, really, to anyone. I'm doubtful that anything that we're going to talk about is just brand new. You've never even heard of the concept. However, what we would encourage you to do is what we're doing as we go through the process, and that's asking the question, how well am I doing these things in my life? How well am I applying what I know? Because what's that quote that you always share with me? Something like, if you don't do, you don't know, or something. To not do is not to know, or something like that.
To not do is to not know.
Yeah. And so really, even though this may be just confirming some information you've already heard, we really hope that this is something that can spur you to change your habits and make your life a little more awesome.
Well, that really is the foundation of learn, do, become. That's why we chose those 3 words, because we have learned, we know, we understand a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But if we don't have a way, and it's not just not a desire to put it into practice, it's not knowing what we want to do. It's a simple day by day or a consistent way to apply the things that we want to do. Once we get that down, we figure out how to do what we know. The becoming happens almost automatically. Mm-hmm. So, and I think when we're conscientious about it, we have that result. I was just talking to April earlier about, we've seen periods in our lives when we've done this more with a more focused approach, and we've seen great results. And we've had actually a period where I was less maybe inclined to do this or do it well. And there was a 5-year period right after we finished college where we had kind of 5-year goals mapped out. And I really was kind of thinking about how I wanted to grow in several areas of my life. And I saw tremendous growth and progress. And then the subsequent 5 years, maybe I got a little too comfortable, was in a good position, some things were working out for us. But it was then that we went through some more difficult times, a recession in the economy, a downturn, just other things that we thought we wanted to do, but it wasn't really clearly articulated or mapped out. And I just look back in hindsight and recognize those 5 years weren't as productive or as fruitful as they could have been. Mm-hmm. And then the subsequent 5 years, 2010 to 15 now, we'll do some things we'll talk about a little bit later on. But putting that focus back in, the results that came from that were amazing in comparison. So I can see 3 5-year windows that, based on our effort, our pre-focus, really resulted in a much different outcome based on those goals and that architecture.
Yeah. So let's just go ahead and we'll list what the 5 habits are that we'll be covering, and then we'll just start going through each one. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay. So I'll just read them off briefly. Number 1 is create a 5-year plan, like Eric was just talking about, and then revise it annually. Number 2 is identify next actions on each of your projects.
So we want to kind of articulate how those connect up to the areas of learn to become. So the first one has to do with life architecture, and that's the 5-year plan. It's a simple way to start. Look at the next 5 years out, and that starts to give you the foundation of a life architecture. That second one goes more to productivity and organization. We're going to identify the next actions on each of your projects.
Mm-hmm. Number 3 is about health. How are we taking care of our physical bodies? So this habit is to eat green vegetables.
Simply said, simply done.
Number 4 is emphasis on family. We are going to be talking a lot about family, about marriage, and so the habit is to schedule your family into your life. We'll talk about how that happens. And number 5.
And the last area we cover is spirituality, and that has a lot to do with faith, religion, just the inspiration that we need in our lives, however you define that. And so that 5th habit we're going to talk about today is connecting with the divine first, the first thing we do each day, and making that our focus as we live our lives.
Now we're going to have an action item associated with each of these habits, and as we go through this and share this action item, of course, you can modify it to meet your needs. I mean, everything here obviously will need to be tailored specifically to you, but we hope that we'll lay a good enough foundation that you can go from there.
But with this half-hour we have together here in this audio recording, we wanted to leave you kind of these 5 habits and then something actionable you could do with each one or just one of them. But you could walk away from this recording being able to put something in place, a do item, that as you do that, you'll start to see a noticeable change immediately in the way you live your life.
Because that just makes life fun, right?
Well, that's the purpose of it.
Okay. All right. So let's jump into number 1, the life architecture habit, which is create a 5-year plan and then revise it annually. And you gave some background on your 2000 to 2005 and then 5 to 10 and 2010 to 2015, talking about how those had changed. Anything else that you want to share on that as far as how you specifically made that 5-year plan? What does that look like for you?
Well, it'll come actually out in this action item as well. I think it's identifying the areas in which we want our lives to grow. So you might set some goals in the areas, in the spiritual areas, right? Spiritual, it might also be intellectual, might be social.
Financial.
Could be financial and physical. Those are just probably 5 of the 6 that we might cover. But you might pick a couple goals that you want to see yourself achieve over the next year to 5 years. Once those are articulated and they're written down, there's some place you're going to see and think about them, it becomes a lot easier to put the day-by-day efforts into that. And we'll talk about how to connect maybe your 3-month plan to those 5-year goals. Then you'll review those annually. But it's a very, very helpful way to go. That's one approach. I know April does it a little bit differently in how she approaches.
Well, so, I mean, from what I've seen you create, having this 5-year plan where you'll have maybe on the left, you write down the categories, and then on the right, you write down specific goals in each of those, something like that. I'm more free-flowing. I like vision boards. So I will sometimes either just get a file folder and put a bunch of Post-it notes in it, or right now I have a dry erase board that's hanging on the wall of my office. And
you've also used those Elmer's trifold boards that we use for our kids' science projects.
Yeah.
And just having Post-it notes inside that board, because the board can then fold up, you can carry it around, you can stick it in the closet or behind a file cabinet. But then I've seen her open it up every 2 or 3 months. She'll usually keep it in a place that's visible, but she'll probably every 2 or 3 months review it and actually move some of the Post-its around, take a few down that have either been done or that maybe aren't quite as essential anymore, aren't quite central to her purpose. And it's been interesting because one time I think you had a whole bunch of Post-it notes all over the board, and then you kind of figured out there were 3 areas you really wanted to focus on.
Yeah, I think I had about 50 to 60 Post-it notes with all kinds of great goals regarding, the podcast that we create, regarding health goals, just regarding a lot of different projects I was working on. But it overwhelmed me because I was trying to do too much. So I simplified it down to about 15 Post-it notes, and
the 15 really tied into 3 areas that she was most focused on this year. So she may not be looking out 5 years as much. I think maybe we do that a little bit more in concert and conversations that we have.
Yeah.
But that board becomes kind of what she wants to work on in a given year. And those 15 Post-it notes really kind of centralized on 3 corners of a triangle. We probably ought to shoot some photos of like the whiteboard, the Elmer's fold-up board, maybe do a screenshot of the Excel. I like Excel, so some of you might like Evernote, other types of resources. There are lots of ways to do this. We just want to help you kind of be thinking of the process of picking these 5 or 6 key areas and setting out the goals that you want to work toward.
And even making them scary goals. I think that that's important too, because I think one reason a lot of people don't create a vision board is because they don't want to set themselves up for failure.
It is. Well, I also think there's just a quick analogy here, not to go too deep into it, but I was reading The Icarus Deception by Seth Godin, and he talks about our change, our growth takes us out of our comfort zone, but there's circles that we need to step out of. The interior circle is the comfort zone. The next circle is the safety zone. We tend not to want to leave the comfort zone because we feel a little, it's kind of scary, it's a little challenging, but you're still in the safety zone even when you step outside the comfort zone. Now, if you go past the safety zone, there's the danger zone, right? So we're just trying to figure out how do we stretch ourselves, the goals we've set to get outside of our comfort zones, but not put ourselves into real danger, but put us into a place where, you have the potential to fail, because failure is not bad. Failure is an opportunity to learn from those mistakes and learn a better way to do it. It's a way to grow, and it's a way to say, I'm really pushing myself beyond my limits. So not to diverge too far.
You don't have to share your vision board or your 5-year plan with anyone, right?
You don't have to.
This can be something for you.
If you feel like you want to keep it personal, you can. But we found a lot of times that success comes when you share that with somebody you trust, an accountability partner.
Or a good friend.
Could be a friend, a spouse, a colleague at work. They can really help kind of keep you on track and follow up on how that's going for you.
Okay, so our action item for this.
So I'm going to actually share a bit of a template and modify it a little bit for this audience. I have a chance in some of the work I do in our community to work with some young adults who are transitioning out of just different service opportunities or education and help them figure out what their next step goals are. And I do this exact thing we just talked about. I have these 6 areas down the left side, and I say, tell me what you want to be and look like 5 years from now. What are the goals? What are the accomplishments that you will have achieved in those 6 areas? And once they get that perspective, that vision, down below, I give them the exact same 6 areas, and I say, okay, well, tell me about the activities, the efforts you're going to step into over the next 3 months. So it's kind of what are the action processes, what are the action steps that are going to help lead you in the next 3 months to that goal. At the end of those 3 months, they'll come back and set up some new actions based on what they've accomplished, and just what they find is they achieve those goals within about 2 to 2.5 years, the 5-year goals, which is amazing. I actually read a quote from a man who said, I once sat down and set out my life and all the things I hoped to accomplish by the time I was 35. And he was 17 at the time. And he said, and I put myself to working on those daily, and I found that I had accomplished and achieved every one of those goals by the time I was 22 years old. So once we have that type of clarity and that focused effort, this doing to become, you will find out that you'll be able to reach those goals much quicker.
And then set new ones.
Right.
You're not done.
That's why this habit, this number one habit, is create a 5-year plan and then revise it annually. Because at the end of this year, you might find that you're done with quite a bit of the 5-year plan.
Yeah.
Well, good. Extend it. Make another 5-year plan. And
Don't just retire.
Yeah, you'll find great achievement in that, I think.
All right, well, let's step into habit number 2 in our productivity area. This is about identifying next actions for each of your projects.
And just a little aside on that, April over the last 5 to 7 years has really spent some time developing a system that has really worked well for individuals and families. It's very much based off of David Allen's Getting Things Done and the David Allen Company, some great principles that he has laid out there. She has found a way to kind of personalize those for individuals and families to help them focus on and be able to get these big kind of challenging projects done in a very simplified way.
Right. And so a next action, as defined by David Allen, is identifying the next specific, visible activity that will move a project toward completion. Now, obviously, there are some bigger projects, more of the life goals, like talked about in habit number 1. But right now, I'm going to talk about those projects that are weighing on your mind that might be something like, oh, I need to paint the bathroom, or I'm starting a new business, or maybe we need to declutter the garage or something like that. And so I'm just going to walk through a couple of examples and show how we identify next actions. So example number 1. Let's say that you just got back from a conference and you have a notebook completely full of notes. You've scribbled things in the margins, you've written down names of people you've met, you just have tons of different book ideas or things that you can do, and you come home really excited from the conference. What I find is that most people end up doing absolutely nothing with what they end up bringing home from a conference.
Why are you looking at me?
Oh, no. Not you. But you come home with 300 business cards or a whole bunch of notes, and then it just feels too overwhelming. You don't know what to do. So a next action could be take 20 minutes and go through your notebook and your business cards and put together 1-page sheet of your most essential takeaways. I do this for every conference where I'll say, okay, here are the ideas I want to implement right now. It's usually about 4 or 5 things. Here are the things I want to do as soon as I can. Here's some of the key things that I learned at the conference. And here is maybe the 5 people I really want to follow up with through email or phone call or something like that. That way, I still have my whole huge notebook, but I have one sheet, just 20 minutes going through and just making kind of an executive summary of what I learned at the conference. And
I'm guilty of that, because when I go to conferences, it might be 2 or 3 days of just great information flowing at you. You've got so many notes, but then those go in a folder or in a binder, or they go on a shelf somewhere. And when I watched April do this, that 1 page, those 4 or 5 things she wants to work on, those 4 or 5 people she wants to reach out to and keep in contact with to do something immediate, the amount of value, I mean, that is probably 10 times or more the value of the conference.
Right.
And you're getting it right back out because you went there, you learned it, now you're doing something with it to apply it. So
learn, do, become. Wow, that's exciting. Okay, so yes, absolutely. That is just one really simple next action for something like conference notes. Here's another example. This is something we're working on right now. We have totally blank walls in our family room. We used to have a lot of pictures hanging up and a lot of different things we had on the walls, but about 1.5 years ago, we had our entire family room repainted, and I just couldn't bear to put all the old stuff up there again because I didn't totally totally love it. And so we've left it blank. So that's one of my projects. I have nothing on my walls, and I want something on there, either photos of our family or inspiring quotes or beautiful art or something, but I don't even know where to begin. So next action, I think for me, is to sit down and have a discussion with Eric and just say, hey, Eric, any ideas on what we could put on our walls, or do we want to take a family picture, or what's this plan or this vision that we have? Because we're in that family room all the time, and I want the things on the walls to inspire our children, inspire us, and help the whole home feel happier. So
let's put a backboard up with a basketball hoop on it, and we can shoot at it. That's my idea.
Okay, maybe I'll call a girlfriend.
End of meeting.
Okay, so hopefully you've gotten the gist of what a next action is. It's just, instead of thinking of the whole project or the whole idea, you're just identifying what's one thing that we can do that's going to move us forward. So our action item for you on this is to take those main goals that you put into your life and maybe write down the top 2 or 3 projects on your mind, if it's the garage or a business or something that's on your mind, and then just identify a very, very specific next action. Boil it all the way down to something that can't possibly look overwhelming because it's so simple to do.
Well, just a quick add-on to that is, with that project, define things in terms of projects, because when you make them simple and bite-sized, they'll get done. If you're like, I want to go redo the whole backyard.
Yeah.
Too big. It'll be too.
Well, procrastinate.
Pick something smaller on that, and then figure out on that what is the next action. What I've found is when you define things in terms of a project, a quick thing you should do is just make a quick list of all the actions that would be needed to do to take care and get that whole project done. It might be an 8-step project, it might be a 3-step or a 20-step, but just write them all out, just brainstorm them, and then you worry about prioritization. Pick which one would go first, then which one would go second. Maybe those next 2 would go together. But then you now know exactly what needs to happen step by step, almost like a Pez dispenser. I'm pretty good at taking a piece of candy out of a Pez dispenser. It kicks the next one right up to me. Take that one out. And all of a sudden you'll find that it's empty. The project's done. And so that's just one thing. Pick your project and then brainstorm your next actions. Figure out what that first one is, and that's where you start.
Exactly. Okay, Eric, I think that you should introduce habit number 3.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so the third area on Learn to Become is health. That includes nutrition and fitness and stuff. That's what we'll be focusing on. This habit is simply eat green vegetables. It is my favorite thing in the world to do because I was raised eating green vegetables all my life. I'm kidding. I don't love them as much as April does. But April and my daughter Aaliyah has been working with Jonathan Baylor, the author of The Calorie Myth, on some programs for individuals and families to help them eat more healthfully.
Right.
The SANE program is what Jonathan Baylor has called it. SANE's an acronym. But it's been amazing, and I need to step up and be a little bit better here. But April and Aaliyah have seen amazing changes in themselves, their health, their fitness, and their self-confidence just by starting with this very simple element of eating green vegetables. So.
Right. And so initially the challenge that Jonathan made was to have double digits of non-starchy vegetables every day. So 10 plus servings of things like carrots, celery, tomatoes, spinach, romaine lettuce, all those types of things, which is great. So I started out with things like bell peppers and carrots and stuff like that.
Pizza,
I liked.
Frozen pizzas weren't on that list?
Frozen pizza was not on the list. And not starchy things like potatoes and corn and stuff like that. Okay, but here's the deal. Even though we've heard our whole lives that we should eat our vegetables, I mean, pretty much every weight loss program out there encourages you to eat vegetables. Like, no one's debating that vegetables are good for you. But until I really started learning from Jonathan, I didn't know that the deep green leafy vegetables were that much better for you. I thought it was just kind of like, oh yeah, eat your Brussels sprouts or eat some carrots. But what I found, and I'm not going to go into detail here, but you can search online or read pretty much any nutrition book that will explain the vitamins and minerals and the benefits of things like kale, spinach, broccoli, collard greens, romaine lettuce, Brussels sprouts, things that are deep green. So we've been starting to do green smoothies in the morning. I've been sauteing kale with my eggs. I mean, Eric thinks that looks disgusting, but I really like it. And we're just trying to find ways to be able to get these green vegetables into our bodies. And again, this is something that I'm sure you've heard, but how well are you doing it right now? Because one of the stories that I really love that Jonathan has shared is he said, whenever somebody comes up to me at a conference and says, hey, I'm trying to go SANE and it's not working for me, and you'll learn all about SANE more on the website. But he said, whenever someone comes up and says it's not working for me, he asks them the question, how many servings of green vegetables have you eaten today? And the answer is usually none. That's usually the answer. And so as we have been trying to make our bodies stronger and healthier, we found that green vegetables really are like this magic pill or the secret weapon. So.
What we're developing, what April and Lee are developing for Learn to Become, are a couple of programs to help individuals and families be able to eat and kind of live in a sane way. Again, sane's an acronym we'll go into more later. But the whole approach is to develop this program in a way that the menus, the meal items, the things that we're really preparing to eat and the way we live is something that becomes very easy to do. It's something that's natural, it's appetizing, and it's appealing. Because, when I see April frying up kale and eggs, it doesn't quite say, hey, this is breakfast to me.
And you took pictures of the green smoothie I made this morning.
I will say, she has a green smoothie. There's a number of green smoothie recipes they have. One actually has some orange zest in it, and so the way it's formulated actually tastes like a liquid orange creamsicle.
Yeah.
So we're finding we're trying to work together as a family, and we love, as a community that forms here at Learn to Become, to hear your ideas about what are ways that you incorporate these vegetables and other things into your menu plans for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah, we need help.
Because, I think that's where we're really finding the success, is finding the menu items that everyone loves, that even our two youngest, our sons, will say, oh, I'm excited about having that for dinner, right?
Yeah.
And so vegetables now become a part of their life, where maybe it wasn't a part of mine or many of those who are listening.
Yeah.
Many of us weren't raised on just eating and loving vegetables. So.
Okay, so our action item here is just for you to identify one way that you can get more green vegetables into your diet. So whether that's going online right now and Googling some green smoothie recipes, or going to Jonathan's website, sanesolution.com, go check out what he has to offer there and just start.
Or even just Google green leafy vegetables and look down that list and you pick out your favorite 5.
Then go to the store.
Brussels sprouts and kale are not mine, but there are lots of others out there, some I hadn't even heard of before. They're actually really good.
Awesome. Okay. Habit number 4, schedule your family into your life. Now, I know this seems a little bit silly. Like, really, do I have to schedule my family into my life? Because they're all over the place. My family is there when I wake up in the morning. My kids are underfoot, or the children are needing me, or whatever.
But most of those family experiences, interactions are more operational. They're getting something done, getting ready for the day, getting school lunches and backpacks packed. It's running kids to practice. It isn't really an intentional, thoughtful way that we've incorporated our family into our life.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about a couple ways that we've actually scheduled our family time into our life that has been helpful. Now, one is having a weekly review. Eric and I have a review for 1 hour, usually an hour, hour and a half, every Friday morning, and that's where we're planning and reviewing and talking about what's happening in our lives, what's happening in the coming week, and what we're going to do to work together.
And we'll talk more about this in later recordings and whatnot. But that review, and I actually look at it more as a preview as well, a weekly review.
Yeah.
The weekly review is a concept that David Allen has in his Getting Things Done system. That it's one of the many things April's adopted. But I've loved it because we've adopted it as a couple. You find the time that would work for you individually or with, a significant other in your life or whoever it might be. But finding a time to sit down, whether it's for 15 minutes, a half an hour, and just go over the things that need to be reviewed and previewed, right? We take actually 10 minutes. We call it our 10 days in 10 minutes. We try to look at the next 10 days, so it'll carry us all the way through that weekend and the next full week, and just identify the activities, the events, the things that need to happen, and kind of coordinate some of our collaborative work and whatnot. It's very, very helpful, right? And it just really helps as we look at our activities. Then we can, after the 10 minutes are over, talk about anything we want to do with our children or our family to make that more meaningful. But that preview process really does help become more intentional about being in the moment. And I hear a lot of people talk about being present or being in the moment.
That's the ideal, right?
It is. That's the ideal. We want to enjoy as much because all we ever have is the present. I mean, we can look back on the past, we can hope and plan for the future, but I think our present becomes more powerful and more meaningful when we take a little time periodically to look backwards at what has been happening, how it's been going, what's worked well, what hasn't, and also then look ahead and figure out what's coming down the pipeline. What are we going to be able to do? What are the events, activities, opportunities where we can intentionally pre-plan to do some things well when that moment in the future becomes the present?
So weekly reviews have been awesome for us. Another thing that we are trying to do is schedule time to be available with our children and with each other. Now, this is something that might seem a little odd at first, but it basically means you have an hour or two scheduled in your day when you are not on your phone, you're not in email, you don't have your laptop open, you don't have the TV on, you are just present. Now, you don't necessarily have to be just sitting there staring into space. You could be, reading an actual real newspaper. You could have a real book in front of you. You could have, be folding laundry, just doing something where you're just in one spot and you're available. This has been huge for our children, first of all, because what tends to happen is when we just sit down, for example, say it'd be right after dinner. This is typically when we've done it for over the past, 15 years. Once we've eaten dinner, we'll sit down in the family room for a few minutes, no TV on, just being there. And that's when the children will typically come and sit by us and they'll start talking. They'll start sharing. They'll start saying things like, oh, hey, I want to talk to you about my test at school today. Or I just reached this goal that I set. Or there was this guy at school who was being really mean to me today. Or something like that. And they'll just start talking.
Like for me, actually, my opportunity is I've found the last year or so I've had the chance to take our kids to school, drop them off in the mornings because they have a pretty early start. And it's been awesome because I'm driving our middle schooler over to middle school. She has her two younger brothers in the back, but that's a lot of time when she'll talk to me about some things. It's not long, and we can pick up those conversations later on after school or another time, but that's when they open up. When I drop her off and I'm taking our two elementary school boys to school right after her, we get into some pretty fun and funny conversations and just talking about kind of what's on their mind, what they're thinking about, maybe some things they're concerned about or worried about. And I also take my daughter, our high school daughter, to an early morning event and then, sometimes drop her off from there to high school. And that's when I think a lot of those conversations, those opportunities, what we try to do is we try to keep the radio off. The children who have phones now, they keep the phones away, and so do I. I'm driving. Obviously. But it's awesome because it's this non-radio, non-cell phone distracted time where we're just kind of driving along, talking, laughing, joking a little bit. And it's a great opportunity to kind of really connect. And not that it's typically scheduled, but it is scheduled in a way because I know I take them to school.
But it can also be done in the home. You don't have to only be in a car while you're doing it. And I think that's where sometimes we feel like, well, when you're home, you're just always either busy or on electronic or something like that.
Right. But I bring up the car option because I know a lot of parents are taking their kids to activities and events, practices after school.
They're not just hanging out at home all day.
Periodically, you could maybe have intentionally planned for that to be radio free and maybe ask the kids, hey, let's put the phones away, the devices away, and just talk about something. It might be, hey, what was the high and the low of your day today?
Yeah, make it natural.
Yeah, I used to pick my daughter up from middle school, and it used to be that I'd ask him, okay, what was the funnest thing that happened to you today?
You did a carpool, right?
Like we did a carpool. We had she and about 3 or 4 of her friends, and I would often ask them, what was the most enjoyable part of your day one day? The next would be, what was the saddest part of your day today?
Yeah.
And what was the craziest thing that happened to you today? Or what was the worst thing you smelled today, right? I mean, they sound like ridiculous questions, but it gets a dialogue and it gets interaction going where you have a chance to really kind of connect with and build a relationship with those people who are important in your life.
And your mom was a great example of this too, where you had 2 kind of family gathering rooms in your house. One is called the blue room, that's more of the TV room, and one's called the brown room, that has a fireplace and the piano, and it's more for reading, right?
And it's like kind of a small little room still with all of our 1970s, 80s furniture.
Awesome.
I love that room.
I do too. And so one of the things your mom told me, though, she said, when I want my children to open up to me and talk to me, I know if I just come sit here in the brown room and just read the paper, just kind of sit here, that the children one by one will start coming in and just start talking. And I thought that was brilliant because, again, this is a question, how well are we doing these things? And of course, you might not, have children right now. This isn't just for people who have children. But as you're thinking about your family or your environment, the people who are important to you, are you making time to just be available? It's the same thing, I feel like, as a wife. When you come home or I get home, if I'm caught up in my laptop or I'm caught up in doing something and I'm not available to talk to you, and maybe you just had an experience you want to share with me, or maybe you just wanted to connect with your wife and say hi, it's important for me to be able to shut the computer or, disengage from what I was doing and actually be present for you, just like I appreciate when you're present for me.
One thing, this principle, just a quick aside, the principle of being accessible works not only just in a home and a family with children and spouses, it can work for grandparents, right? Mm-hmm. Your grandchildren know that there are certain things that you're doing, and when they come to grandma or grandpa's house, when you do those things, you become accessible. It becomes a kind of a culture there. In the workplace, in the professional environment, if you manage a team or whatnot, you might have a time when people know that that's kind of your open window. Your door remains open, right? Yeah. It could be 1 to 3. It could be 10 to 11. Whatever, you kind of set a certain kind of window when people know if they have something important they need to come talk to you about, there's kind of this window that's just kind of a standing window that's open if they need to use it. I just think that being approachable and being kind of open and available, it's a powerful concept in connecting to family and to others in our lives.
Right, exactly. So the action item here is actually kind of a fun one. You want to describe this?
Yeah, I would just kind of suggest, go to your calendar right now and just schedule. You don't have to do it right now, but schedule a half an hour to an hour when you can do a review and a preview, kind of like we talked about, to look backward over the recent weeks and look forward to the week ahead, where you can look briefly over the things that are working with your family and what things you could do better. And then look ahead and think about what that would look like, right? So, like, for example, tonight we have a choir concert with our middle school daughter. So I'm trying to think, okay, when we plan this, what can I do to make that time with her a little bit more special? And April brought up, but what else can we also do maybe in the moment with our two younger boys who might be kind of squirming around in the seats? What can we do to help them maybe appreciate the music and the culture that's being presented to them? Yeah. So it's taking that half hour to look at the week ahead and reviewing the weeks before and figuring out, okay, what's coming up and what can I schedule or what can I do to be more deliberate, more intentional, more present with my family.
Yeah, so just scheduling that 30 to 60-minute window for you to think about it, what it looks like in your life.
Right.
Whatever your family situation is or work situation, how can you make a more deliberate choice in how you make time for the relationships that matter? All right, habit number 5. This goes in our spirituality topic. It's connect with the divine first. Now, one of the things that we want to emphasize here at Learn, Do, Become is that everyone might have a different way that they define God or a higher power or what the divine looks like in your life. But we feel like all of us can agree that there's some higher power. There's something that's bigger than ourselves, whether you consider it, Mother Nature, or whether you believe in a God. But we want to talk about how that connection with that divine, with that higher power, is important for all of us. And I heard a statistic one time that said that 90% of people who own a smartphone check it within 5 minutes of waking up. So it means you wake up, you're still in bed, you grab your phone, you're checking text, email, social media, things like that. Now, as I've talked to different groups around the United States, as I've been doing different events, I'll share this statistic, and typically everyone in the room will just nod their head in agreement. Say, yeah, that's what I do. I wake up in the morning and I check my smartphone. So here is a question. What if 90% of the people in the world who owned a smartphone or not connected with the divine before connecting with anyone or anything else? What would that do to our world? So this is kind of a challenge that I would like to issue to you, is inviting you to think about what that would look like and how that would help define your day. I'll just share how this has helped my life. Because I work online, because I have lots of emails I'm dealing with, and I'm very involved in social media, if I wake up in the morning and just check my email first, I could honestly be on email all day long and I could be on social media all day long and not run out of something to type or say or do. And I think that's true for most all of us.
Yep.
The more engaged you want to be online, the more others are going to engage with you, and you can just have conversations going all day. But I found that what that did was it distracted me from being able to have conversations with my children as I'm helping get them ready for school. It kind of threw me into a whirlwind in the morning where instead of actually getting focused and centered, I would just start jumping around trying to solve problems that had come through in the middle of the night, or, some link wasn't working on the website or something like that. And I would end up just jumping into problems. And I ended up feeling a lot more stressed out and overwhelmed, even though I felt like I was being productive. So I tried this experiment. I said, okay, I'm not even going to check my email till my kids are off to school and I've had time to connect with the divine. And as I have done that, it has completely changed how I feel about the control I have of my life. I no longer feel like my phone controls me. It's that I get to choose when I check my messages and when I don't. And I feel so much more purposeful, and I feel that my work is so much more meaningful because I'm doing it deliberately. I'm not just jumping around responding to anything that comes my way.
Yeah. And I think all of us can experience, we've had days maybe we have put something more intentional like that connecting to the divine or whatever it might be at the beginning of our day. And you can see a measurable, noticeable difference in how that day went versus the other days when you wake up, you're harried, you're flustered, it's email and social media that's starting your day off, or your kids waking you up. But if we can find a way to get up a little earlier, and that might mean getting to bed a little bit more responsibly, but having that time early in the morning when we can connect to whatever that divine source is, it becomes powerful. And one principle I've noticed that there is a tremendous need for us to be centered and recentered regularly. We have a tendency to become distracted and drift with all the world and its influences around us, that we really need to have a regular process in place for us to realign, reconnect, refocus, and recreate ourselves. And so I think this simple habit, again, each of these 5 habits, you can take 1 or 5 of them and do 1 or all of them, but you are going to notice a tremendous difference in the quality of your life and the enjoyment, the happiness in it. And that's the part that's exciting for us here. So, take this opportunity maybe to define what divinely connecting might mean for you. Mm-hmm. What would that be? Is it a matter of meditation? Is it a matter of just being out in nature or just sitting quietly in the morning thinking? Is it a matter of prayer? Is it a matter of studying from Scripture or holy texts? Is it a matter of journaling? We've had a lot of people talk about having a gratitude journal or just the things that they want to record and remember from their lives. But as you take, some action that will connect you and center you in this kind of divine source of power each day, you're going to notice a tremendous difference, as that's the first thing you do early on and how it affects and shapes the rest of your day. And maybe the most important part of this step, as well as any other, is this whole idea of consistency, of consistent action. We kind of joke about the shampoo bottle on the back saying, rinse and repeat. But we wash our hair, we brush our teeth, we do these things every day, or nearly every day, because of the consistency and what that yields for us. And so just with any good practice or habit, it's that consistent effort, that consistent action of doing that leads to the becoming. And so just remember that, as we go through these things, you pick a habit, and you can't just eat your green vegetables one day and think it's all going to work out for you. But as you consistently get into that habit, or as you consistently connect with the divine first, you're going to notice things happening, your life changing in a very, very positive way. So just maybe to recap these 5 areas we've gone over in the action item. The first was life architecture. And so the habit was to create a 5-year plan and then review it and revise it annually. The action item was to use this template that has these major elements: spiritual, intellectual, physical, financial, and so forth, and define what are your 5-year goals and kind of figure out what those are, articulate them. Number 2 has to do with productivity and organization. It would be to identify the next actions on each one of your projects, or those things that you want to be moving forward on in your life. The action is to take those main goals that we put into that life architecture and identify your next action for each one of them. So the things you'll be working on in the next 3 months. Number 3 is in the area of health, kind of that nutrition and fitness. And the habit is to eat green vegetables. And the action we're inviting you to take is identify one way that you can get more green vegetables into your diet. What are they? What are the ones you would enjoy, and how do you fit them into your diet regularly? The 4th area has to do with family, our home, our marriage, our family. And it's to schedule your family into your life. The action we're encouraging you to do is to stop right now and just find a half an hour to an hour block of time. Put that on your calendar where you can look at reviewing and previewing kind of your current life circumstances and figuring out the ways and places you can put your family first into your life. And the 5th has to do with our spirituality area and our faith, our religion perhaps. And the habit is to connect with the divine first. And so we're just encouraging you to define what that divine connection will look like for you, and then decide what time you want to do it, what that activity will consist of, and then maybe setting an alarm on your phone right now to get up at that time of day and put that practice into action.
All right, so we hope that you've enjoyed learning about these 5 habits. We're really grateful to have you here at Learn, Do, Become, and we're on this journey with you. This is a process that's going to help our family, I know, and we're hopeful that it will be really helpful to you as well.
Yeah, we're very, very grateful to have you with us, to be part of this Learn, Do, Become community. It is that process of us learning together, understanding the things that we can do, then figuring out the best practices, the best way to do those things, and in the process become the best individuals, couples, and families we can become. So very excited to have you here, looking forward to learning and growing and doing and becoming together.
I hope that you enjoyed today's audio. And I hope that as you thought about those 5 areas that Eric and I discussed and the next actions to accompany them, that you start to get new ideas of things you can do in your life to help you to architect a life of excellence. Remember, we have the templates for you on our show notes page, learndobecome.com/episode 94. And if you are currently in our STEP program, please make sure that you are in the mastery version of the program and that you come into the Facebook group, because it is a party in there every single day. We love being able to serve you, connect with you, interact with you, and give you more coaching and support. If you have no idea what our STEP program is, you are in for a treat. Come take our free training at learndobecome.com/step, and you can learn 4 really simple tips that will help you to stop drowning in piles of clutter. We love the work we do. We love being able to have you as part of our community and hope that you find joy and inspiration and light and happiness and all the great things that life has to offer. Thanks for being here. Have a great day, and we will see you soon at learndobecome.com.